Hey everyone, my name is Kelly. I'm a librarian with the San Mateo County Libraries, and welcome back to Create with Kelly. I have another activity for you all. And as a reminder to all, actually, let me go ahead and share my screen with you. Because it's summer, and this summer, Create with Kelly is going to virtual STEAM camp. If you joined us last week, you saw a tutorial on how to make your own summer journal. Hopefully you were able to try out making a journal and you've been using your journal as you see fit. And this week we have another activity. We're going to be exploring a little bit of science this week in our activity. Don't forget, of course, that Summer Learning Challenge started on June 1st and goes through August 31st. And you can participate by going to summerlearners.org. We have, I believe there's 12 $1,000 college scholarships that we raffle off at the end of the summer. And the way that you can get that raffle ticket is by reading and learning this summer, uploading, letting us know what you did on that website, summerlearners.org, and that's how you get your raffle tickets. Among other things, we have free books to give out to the community, and we hope to be doing that very, very soon. And if you'd like to share with us your experiments, what you've been up to, what you've been making, we are on social media, and if you are there too, you're invited to tag us with your posts. We have our handle there at SMC Libraries, and you can also tag us using the hashtag SMCL Creates. Love to see what you're working on this summer. And our topic for this week, we are learning about the 4 R's, that is reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot. And we are also going to do an activity around, learning those 4 R's. And then we'll also start a composting project, which relates to that 4th R of rot, or decomposing. So the supplies you'll need for the 4 R's activity, you'll need some paper, pencils, something to draw with and write with. If you have markers and you like working with markers, you can use those. You'll need some glue, some scissors, and then you can either draw, or if you want to use magazines or newspapers to find items that fit into the 4R categories. We'll explore that in just a moment here. And then for the composting project, that's exploring the 4th R of rot, you'll need some food scraps or even some natural materials from your yard, such as leaves, flowers. You need some dirt. You'll also need a cup or a dish to put all of this in. You don't really need a permanent marker, but we will be taking some notes, so you'll need paper and pencil or another material. Maybe even using some kind of tech option to take some notes. So let's go over the 4 R's, and then we'll start making that 4 R's challenge game activity. So the first one is reduce, which means to cut back or use less of. And this helps us to reduce the amount of trash that we make in the first place. So I have an example. Actually, there's right here a water bottle that I reuse over and over again. Instead of using a plastic bottle, I am able to reuse and reduce the amount of trash that I am producing because I'm not using plastic water bottles. I'm just using one bottle over and over and over again. And you can do that too. That's a pretty easy one. Which keeps you hydrated, but also helping the environment, right? That's why we want to use the 4 R's, of course, because it helps the environment and helps us as humans have a better relationship with the environment. A few other ideas of how you can reduce the amount of trash that you make. So another one, although right now during the coronavirus shelter in place, we're not allowed to use our reusable shopping bags at the moment, but that's a great one to help reduce the number of plastic bags that we're using, even paper bags for that matter. And I know I usually, I really prefer to use my own bags when I'm shopping because it just makes sense and less trash, right? But a few other ideas you can try to purchase when you go to the grocery store. If you can find options for buying food, and especially like fresh fruits and vegetables, you don't really need to put them in a plastic bag to purchase them necessarily. And now a lot of foods often come with like all kinds of plastic and just packaging, right, to put it all into a container, and that means that that's more trash. And you know, when we buy those things, hopefully after today you'll be thinking of whether you can recycle that object, that trash, or you know, figuring out a way to not get that trash in the first place is really what reducing is all about. I will say I think this one takes a little more time and getting used to as far as changing our habits. A few other ideas: you can, instead of buying new things all the time, you can go to thrift stores or secondhand stores and buy things that still work, but have already been used. So you don't always need something new, right? Especially our clothing, right? If you get a hole in your pants, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to go out and get new pants. You can actually patch it or try to mend it. So trying to fix things as well is another way that we can, you know, reduce the amount of trash that we produce. Reusable silverware, like if you go to lunch and you know, have some silverware, trying to not use, you know, things that are designed to be used once. Hopefully that makes sense to you all. Of course, you can find some other information out there on this this bit about reducing, but I think we can have a lot of impact, a lot of great impact in just reducing and changing the way that we shop, the way that we go about our daily lives, right? What about reusing? So this is another great R to start incorporating into your daily life. I mentioned I was reusing my water bottle, though I did purchase this as a bottle. Actually, no, this was a gift. This was a gift from Las Lomitas School District over in Menlo Park. Hey guys, hey everyone. But here's an example. Actually, this is a glass jar that had coconut oil, which I use for cooking. And now I'm using it to drink water out of. So that's a great way to reuse an item that I could have recycled as well, or maybe it would have gone in the trash. Not in my house, but I decided that this made a great glass for drinking water out of, so I kept it. Certainly in terms of making and creating, you know, there's no need to go out and buy some art supplies, right? There's so much that you can make and do with trash, as we like to call it. It's one of my favorite materials. Repurposing materials and reusing them is a way that I especially like to make. There's a photo on the slide here as well. You can see some creative projects that people make in the garden as well. If you've watched my programs, you know I like making and gardening, and certainly there's a lot of ways that you can reuse containers in the garden as well to grow plants in. So many possibilities here. We really get to exercise our brains, creativity, you know, and when it comes to reusing materials. Again, this is all going to help our environments, and these are actions that you can take too. The third R, recycling. So recycling means to remake new goods that can be sold again. So recycling is typically, now there's different ways of recycling, of course, but some materials that are definitely recyclable include glass, such as the glass jar that I'm reusing and continuing to reuse, but maybe at some point I've accumulated too many glass jars and I could recycle this glass jar and it could be made into new glass jar. Plastic, now we know that plastic is not very good for our environment. It does not, it's not very friendly towards animals. So we want to try to reduce and reuse plastics as much as possible, but plastics are also recyclable. And so there's a lot of different types of plastics, but usually on plastic objects, yep, even this dirt, it's covered in dirt, but it's a plastic little pot. I just looked underneath and I see that symbol, which you can see on the screen there as well, sort of like the universal symbol for recycling and doing good things for our environment, right? So look for that symbol on any type of plastic and other materials as well. That usually is a good indication that that material is recyclable. And we'll talk a little bit more about where you live and how that might affect what can be recycled. But certainly recycling, we do have a choice if we decide to throw that plastic in the garbage can or put it in the recycling bin. And so this is a great way, again, we're going to practice kind of become experts here on using these 4 R's in our daily lives. And certainly once you get in the habit of recycling, it's really, it's just a good habit to have. There's really no reason not to do it. So the final R, and this one, I know when I was in school, we weren't really calling it an R, but I'm glad that we are, because the 4th R, rot, is about composting and biodegradable materials, right? Materials that decompose. And actually, the really awesome thing about that is that I almost want to speak Spanish right now. My brain's trying to think here. As natural materials decompose, they actually release nutrients back into the soil. And why is that a good thing? Well, that helps other plants to grow. We know that plants need nutrients, they need sun, they need water, they need nutrients, just like we need nutrients as humans to stay healthy and grow. Well, that is actually a really good thing for our soils to have as well. And particularly, now compost is reusing more than anything, natural materials. So that's food scraps. Those are, the orange peels, the banana peels, cheese as well. Now, don't put no meat in the compost, but pretty much any other food scrap or a little bit of food that you didn't eat, or the parts of foods, some fruits and vegetables that we don't typically eat, can go into the compost, and that's eventually going to break down and put nutrients back into the soil, help your garden to grow. And I don't know if where I live as well, we do have compost program just like we do for recycling and trash. So maybe you don't have enough space to save all of your food scraps, but you can contribute to composting in that way as well. Which leads me to this excellent resource. Now, before we go into creating our 4 R's game or poster, you can kind of decide how you want to use it. But I found this excellent resource. Now, this is mostly, not sure how far widespread Recology is, but certainly here in San Mateo County, I believe most of our libraries, the communities that our libraries in, are served by Recology. And they have this really cool tool that you can use online, and it'll you can actually type in the name of let's just call it trash. You can type in the name of a material, and it'll tell you, based on where you live, which is the correct bin to put that item in. So let's go ahead and take a look at that together. And let me just find, there it is. Okay, so here we are on the website, whatbin.com. And there's a lot of other great resources from Recology as well, so you can be sure to check those out. Now, I am in East Palo Alto, so I'm going to start typing that in, and you see it pops up there, and I'm just going to click search. And you can see now I'm top of the page, it says East Palo Alto, so that's how I know I'm in the right spot. Now, if you live somewhere else, you could type in the name of the city or town you live in, and that I think is just so helpful because it, the composting, the recycling, and the landfill, right, is a little different depending on where you live. But I'm really thankful that East Palo Alto has this service. And let's go ahead and type something in. Now, let's see. Let's say we had pizza for dinner, and now we have this pizza box. Where should we put the pizza box? So let's see, I'll type in pizza, and I like it pops up a bunch of different other things, which kind of gets me a little distracted. I'm like, oh, what about pots and pans? But let's go ahead and click on pizza box, and there we go. It shows us that that should go in the compost bin, which corresponds to our fourth R, rot, right? So that pizza box would actually break down in the compost bin. What about, I was curious about the pots and pans. Okay, so pots and pans, although they are typically made out of metals, those doesn't look like they can be put into the recycling, but I like that it gives us a note here as well. Please donate this item if it's in good condition, which I think corresponds with that second R we saw of reuse and reduce as well, because if you donate a pot or pan, that allows somebody else to reduce their need to buy something new. Instead, they can buy the one that you had. So even giving things to our friends, right? Family, friends, before you throw something away, it's a good idea to ask around, see if anybody else could use it. Especially if, it's one of those options that goes into the landfill, right? Because what a landfill is like a big, really big trash can. And basically we're using the earth as a trash can, and we can do better. We know that there are things that we can do better to take care of the environment so that, our earth is a healthy place for people and all of the wildlife and nature that exists here. All right, so I encourage you definitely to check out this website, whatbin.com. Make sure you put in your city or the place that you live so that you can get some good advice and accurate information about the correct bins to put different types of materials that you might be, trying to either dispose of or thinking outside of the box there of how maybe you could donate it. Maybe there's so many other things that we can do if we just take a little extra time to think about it. And teach and educate others about it, we can really make a big difference together. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and create this 4Rs activity. As I mentioned, there's a couple of different ways that it can be used. So what I'm showing today, let me go ahead and switch my camera. All right, so what I'm making today is more of like a poster that I could hang on my fridge so that other people in my house can see it and be educated as well. But as we make it, we're also going to be using our knowledge, right? Our understanding of, the 4Rs and how we can, how we can exercise those 4R actions every day in our lives. Another way that you can do this, so in fact, let me go ahead and get started in explaining. So I've gone ahead, I'm gonna make mine a poster, but it can also be a game. So actually Recology has a really cool printout you can print, and you can actually make these little itty bitty Recology paper bins. And so then you can put different items into the bin based on where your knowledge of where they should go, right? But I'm just going to create a slightly different version of that here so that this way, if I wanted to, I could glue down the materials, post this on the refrigerator or on the door, or even by, the trash can. And this serves as a good reminder to anyone around, hey, make sure you put it in the right bin. So a fun way to do this, now you can draw the items, you can you can do some research and look up pictures online, right? You can also use, these are advertisements that seem to come to my mailbox almost every week. I don't know if you're getting them too, but they have lots of great pictures actually, as you can see, of different food and different things that you might buy, right? And then of course, as we know, anything that we consume, anything that we buy, then it's kind of our responsibility, our choice to, dispose of it properly, whether that means we're gonna reuse it or recycle it, or if it applies, that we would put it in the compost and let it rot. So these images are a great place to find, some of those materials. Now, for example, I even see right here, let's see if you can see it. There's some plastic water bottles. I'm gonna go ahead and cut those out. And as you can imagine, if you're playing the game, just having these small little images then, imagine you had like a small little Recology bin, you just like pop it in there, this one's gonna go. So where would this one go? This is these are some plastic bottles, which I know plastic is a recyclable material. Let me get this out of the way. So I could certainly recycle these bottles. But I'm thinking about it. I could glue it down there and be done. But I could also, I was mentioning earlier about the garden, right? I could actually reuse some of these bottles as well. And if I wanted to take it a step further, I could actually not buy the bottled water at all. I could reduce. And although that sparkling water, I really like it, but if I don't buy as much of it, if I reduce, that's a good decision maybe for me. So it's definitely possible that the items that you choose could go into multiple categories. And that's a great way to explore your understanding and knowledge of these 4 R's, right? Is that sometimes it could go in a couple different ways. Which, just like we have choices, you do too. So I think for me, since I'm gonna put it in the recycle category for me for now, but oh look, I have some other bottles. Got some Coke and Sprite. How about, I'm gonna reuse those. I'm gonna actually reuse the bottles. I'm gonna maybe make some containers for plants. If I cut them up, I could plant some plants in there. My camera does not like to focus. There we go. So I have a few other items that I already cut out. Ooh, these ones, I found a lot of plastic bottles. These are actually those I think there's like a gallon, maybe 2 gallons of water. I really like these bottles. I like to reuse them. I don't usually buy them, but I sometimes find them in the recycling bin or stop my other people from throwing them away, right? And I like to reuse those. I fill them up with water and I use those to water my garden as well sometimes. Here I found some watermelon. And actually, did you know that people actually do eat the whole watermelon? You can eat the whole thing. Now, most of us like to eat that nice, the red fruit fleshy part in the middle. It's nice and sweet. It has the seeds in there, but you can eat the shell or the rind of the watermelon. I hear that, I've been told it tastes kind of like cucumber. In fact, I think I've tasted it myself. But let's say I didn't eat all of the shell of the watermelon. So I would probably put that into I'm gonna definitely put it into the rot category, because I could put that into the compost bin, and then that could be used to eventually, as it decomposes, right? Could put some of that into in my garden, or into a flower pot, and use that to help enrich the soil that I'm growing my plants in. I have some cherries. Ooh, and I don't know about you, but when I eat cherries, I usually grab it by the stem, I put it in my mouth, and then I sort of eat around the seed, the pit that's in the center of the cherry. Now, I don't eat the seed though, It does not want to go in my belly, though I'm sure it'd be okay if I did eat it. But I usually have a little bowl and I put them in there. And then after I've gathered all my seeds and eaten the rest of my cherries, I would definitely put those seeds. If I'm not going to try to grow them, I will put the rest into the compost, into that rot category, so that they can decompose and give nutrients to the soil. Let's take a look. Here's a few others. Starting to get hungry. This one, if you can tell, is an image of some corn. And you know, the more you learn about plants, the more you learn about just the different uses for the whole plant, which actually kind of goes back to our reducing the amount of waste, right? If we, you know, use the whole plant, then we don't have to compost it, right? Now I know with corn, usually when you husk the corn, that's removing the corn husk, right? That's the green leafy material that covers the corn, right? When you take that off, there are different things that you can use that for. You can let it dry out, and you can actually, if you've ever made, there's an activity where you can make like dolls out of corn husks. I believe it even has it's a traditional craft form. So there's that, right? But if I didn't, which often happens, usually I just buy the corn and I'm not really thinking about what I want to do with it. So I would probably put the corn husks into the compost. All right, one more. So here, this is some laundry detergent. Comes in a big plastic jug. So a few ideas, of course. We know it's plastic. I would look for that recycling symbol and definitely could recycle it when it's done. But this actually reminds me too of the reduce category, because I think this is something that I think is still a growing trend, but you know, really talking about buying materials that don't have a lot of plastic or extra packaging. And certainly I think laundry detergents and soaps. I think that I know a lot of those businesses are hopefully exploring different ways to help reduce the amount of what they call single-use plastic, because you know, yeah, when we buy this plastic bottle, it's holding the stuff that we need, the laundry detergent, but once it doesn't have that anymore, unless I choose to reuse it or recycle it, you know, it's just going to keep creating waste. But if they made their product in a different way that didn't use plastic, well, that could be a way for me to reduce. So especially this reduce one, I think that's probably the biggest challenge for us, is to, you know, really find ways that we can change our habits, change our ways of being and doing, so that we don't have as much trash to put into the landfills, right? So, of course, you could add a lot more items to here, and I encourage you to do so. You could glue them down, and then this could be a nice, you know, you can certainly write some words on here. You can, of course, put your name, draw pictures, make it colorful, you know, make this something that, you know, is inspiring to you and can help you to, you know, help our environment, help our planet, right? Because you know, we live here now, and the future generations will live here. And if we don't change the way that we treat the environment, there's going to be more problems. That's not good. So we have to act now, and we all have that responsibility as humans here on planet Earth. So I'm excited that you all are going to be out there reducing, reusing, recycling, and rotting. Let's get into our final activity here. And this is an experiment with compost. So some of you, like me, might have a bin that you can put your compost in. I do live in an apartment. I know sometimes when people live in apartments, you don't always have access to recycling and compost. So if you do not, and you're here in San Mateo County, talk to your landlord, let them know, you know, this is important, and that you know, everybody plays a part in recycling and composting, and you know, it's important, especially when we're in, no matter where we live, everyone deserves to have, you know, those options. Ooh, there's a bug in there, which is good. I have some dirt here. Now, this is our compost activity, our experiment. So the idea here is that you want to gather, and this could happen throughout your day, you want to gather either food scraps. Now, I've gathered some leaves. I have a couple different leaves. This is the same leaf starting to decompose. And I just thought that would be interesting to observe. I have another leaf that's kind of broken up there. Just a couple different leaves I got outside. And then I have a lemon and orange peel and eggshells. So basically we're gathering food scraps and other natural materials. You don't want to put any meat in here, so no meat, though you could put cheese if you had some extra cheese. And then what we're going to do is actually cover all of that with dirt. So it doesn't have to be a ton of food. This is really for us to experiment and take notice of any changes that will occur over the next couple of days. Now, I should have maybe taken a picture of this before I covered it up with dirt, because that will, that's part of my documentation, right, as a scientist. All right, so I want to fill that up, and then you're also gonna then just sort of cover it all in water. You don't want the whole container full of water, but you want to make sure that everything gets a little wet in there. And then I'll put some paper in there too, just out of curiosity. So now you're gonna wanna find a spot for this. It can be inside, it can be outside. You're just gonna let it sit for a week, maybe more if you want. And you're gonna, after a week, at least a week, I would say, you'll wanna come back and take a look at what's going on inside of your little compost experiment. Oh, I was looking at it. You can't really see much because it's all covered in dirt. But I'm actually really curious what's gonna happen. Oh, there's that bug again. I don't think they liked the water. All right, so let me just switch my camera one last time. All right, everyone, thank you for joining me yet again for this. Hopefully, you know, you learned something new. Hopefully you're excited to help the planet and change some of our change some of our habits so that we can reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot or compost. All right, thanks for joining me, everyone, and we'll see you next time on Create with Kelly. And yeah, have a great day.